West Virginia football fans, as we know, it was not the prettiest of pictures for Rich Rod's initial season back in the gold and blue. But one of the major issues that we found of many issues last season was along this West Virginia offensive line. Now in comes Rick Trickett, the veteran, who looks to save the day and fix this offensive line and their issues. Can he do it? We're going to talk about it on this episode of Mountaineer Moment, so stick around. This is the Mountaineer Moment, your source for all things West Virginia football and basketball. From pregame to postgame coverage and breaking news, we've got you covered. Let's go. West Virginia fans, welcome to another episode of Mountaineer Moment, episode 262. And here we're talking about this West Virginia football program as we inch closer and closer and closer to football season. Summer is here and the fall is right around the corner, where we get to watch the gold and blue on the field. And again, in this episode, we're talking about this West Virginia offensive line. Rick Trickett is back in the equation, back in the fold, along with Rich Rodriguez for the first time in a number of years. We're going to look at this offensive line another time. We've already done it on this show a little bit, but go in a little bit greater detail to meet this offensive line, what they bring to the table, where they come from, and how it's all going to mesh. And then we'll answer that question, because I think the ultimate question is, how much better will this offensive line be compared to what we saw in 2025? I think it's safe to say at this point, little teaser to what we're going to get to at the end, it will be better. This will be a better offensive line. Some of you are sitting there saying, yeah, because it'd be hard to be worse. And that's very true, right? That's part of the reason that I can even make that statement myself. But how much better is it going to be? How much of a difference will Rick Trickett make? And how much of it's just going to be, rather than the X's and the O's, it's the Jimmies and the Joes? How much of it's going to come down to that? We'll talk about all of that on this episode of Mountaineer Moment 262. And if you have not yet subscribed to the channel, on whatever platform you are on. If you're watching on YouTube, we just eclipsed the 1,200 subscriber mark. Super thankful and grateful for that, but we want to keep on climbing. So, the next stop is 2,000. We would love to get there by the start of football season. So if you're not yet subscribed to Mountaineer Moment on YouTube, do me a favor and go there and hit that subscribe button so we can continue to grow this Mountaineer Moment community together. 262 episodes in less than 10 months. I'm just here to tell you we're as consistent as all get out, and we would love for you to join what we got going on here. All right. Now, this West Virginia football team in 2026, as you think about it, and as we inch closer toward the season, we'll get more into detail of like full-on team previews and things like that. And this episode will serve as a little bit of an offensive line preview for you if you're not fully familiar and want to get back re-engaged with this West Virginia football team and what they got up front. Well, this is an episode for you. Rick Trickett is back in Morgantown for the first time since 2006. He was an assistant coach with the Mountaineers from 01 to 06, along with Rich Rodriguez during that span. He's been to a number of different stops since then and a number of stops before then. Believe it or not, Rick Trickett has been around the block, a time or two, or try 52. 52 years has made him one of the more accomplished offensive line coaches in the country. He was with a part of this Mountaineer coaching offensive line way back in the late 1970s, if you can believe that. He's had other notable stops at Mississippi State, Auburn, LSU, Florida State for a good run from 07 to 17, including winning the national championship there. Glenville State, Jacksonville State most recently from 2022 through 2025. And now he is back in Morgantown at the age of 78 years old. And I remember an interview or, press conference, I should say, with him just a couple months ago. Might have not his introductory thing, but maybe his first one with the, media availability as part of, coming back to the fold in Morgantown. And he kind of just went about it like, I just love football, right? No one would blame him if he retired at 77, 78. And what it boils down to for Rick Trickett is he just continues to love football and believes that he can be an asset to whatever program he's a part of. And he's going to continue coaching until he can no longer do that. So he's the offensive line coach here back in Morgantown. And obviously his last tenure here, we had a pretty good run back in the Rasheed Marshall, Pat White era, and would love to see success. Don't we all? Wouldn't we all love to see some success like those days come back to Morgantown in the near future? But that's who Rick Trickett, he's back. It's a homecoming. He's 78 years old. He's been doing it for a very, very long time. And he's a very good offensive line coach. Now, again, through this episode, we'll talk about, how much of a difference can the, offensive line coach make? Because, again, in 2025, trust me, and you know it as well as I do maybe, there were many issues across this whole football program. From the offensive line to the backs, the receivers, the quarterbacks swapping in and out like it's the YMCA, the defensive backs, the linebackers. I mean, you name it, there was issues. You name it, there were struggles at times, hence why it was a difficult season for the Golden Blue and Rich Rod's first year back at the helm of the program. But one of those things, and I've said it repeatedly, I said it throughout last season, that was really the start of this channel, was right at the start of football season last year. I've said it through, off-season conversations and portal conversation. It was pretty obvious. One of the largest, if not the largest, and I would say the largest question mark heading into the season was this offensive line in 2025. And you got a little worried thinking, how's it going to work? Is it going to work? And the answer that we got right away, I mean, we're talking week 2 against Ohio, right away, that answer was this is going to be a struggle. And we found that out. We found that out rather quickly, and it continued to be a struggle. It continued to be a glaring issue for this team all season long that affected every part of your offense. If you don't have an offensive line that, or I should say, if you have an offensive line that's not very good in pass protection, that's not very good in the run block, then you're going to have some issues. And that's what this team had all year long. Now in steps Rick Trickett. Now how can he have an impact? The offensive line that we're about to discuss, and we'll do a little bit of a deep dive on these guys so you can get familiar. There's competition going on across this offensive line, even, as we inch closer toward the season. There's some guys with, in their own heads, some optimism as to what kind of playing time they're going to get, whether it be a starting role. There is apparently some versatility as well on the offensive line, guys trying out in different positions. And my hope is when you roll this thing out in September, you just got the best 5. In the positions that they can obviously be successful in, but there's new faces, there's some guys that we're very familiar with, and all of them are competing for a job along this offensive line. Let's start first with a few names that we know and a couple guys who have started for this West Virginia offensive line even last season. So Nick Cray is heading into his redshirt junior year. He's one of a few returners on, within this whole program. He plays the tackle position. He started all 12 games a season ago. Did Nick Cray. Landon Livingston, starter at center, heading into his redshirt senior year, his 5th season with the Mountaineers. He was pretty solid. Both those guys, right, if you were to point out some guys that were problems along that offensive line, these two weren't at the top of that list. And so Landon Livingston and Nick Cray, Livingston at center and Cray at one of the guard positions, certainly looking to solidify their starting role yet again in 2026. Another name that we know is Malik Agbo, a redshirt senior, he was at the University of Texas, but now will be entering his 2nd season with the Mountaineers. Added some depth along the West Virginia offensive line, and hopefully, again, the hope with a guy like that is he's going to make a big stride from last season as we head into 2026. Josh Isosa is a redshirt sophomore, also entering his second season with the Mountaineers, was at the University of Oklahoma prior to that. He played in all 12 games last season, whether on the offensive line or on special teams. He's a guy, again, that looks to make a jump heading into this upcoming season. Now some new guys. I'm going to give you about 6 names here to watch, and I really do figure, I mean, there's obviously college football rosters, man, there's 80-plus players, so we might not name every single guy along that offensive line in this episode, but as far as names that are returning, those are some ones to know, and then some transfers and especially one freshman who you all know, hopefully, I'm going to talk about here now. And so one of those names to watch as far as newcomers are concerned is Wes King. He's a senior who spent his last 4 years at the University of Wyoming. He brings a lot of experience. I should say this now before I forget, West Virginia ranks, thanks to Skylar Callahan for this stat I saw, ranks as the 7th most experienced group in the nation along the offensive line. So in other words, there's only 6 other teams in the country that have played more snaps in college football than this West Virginia offensive line. A big part of that is the aforementioned Wes King out of Wyoming. He started 33 games, over 1,700 snaps, and he did all that without allowing a sack. We'll take that. Right, we'll take that. Wes King is absolutely a guy who figures to be competing for a job along this offensive line, and so we'll see. Right, he there were other Big 12 and SEC schools that were interested in him, and so he's a guy that we're hoping to have a big impact. Next is Cam Griffin, a 3-year member of Jacksonville State's offensive line. He transferred to West Virginia, along with Amari Grayson, who we'll get to in just a moment. He was one of the main pieces along the Jack State offensive line that, as we know, headlined by Cam Cook, leading the nation in rushing, over 246 yards per game, which was 5th in the country for Jack State. And he was an All-Conference USA first-team member in 2025. That's Cam Griffin. We're happy to have him in Morgantown. And again, he's coming with Amari Grayson and Rick Trickett, obviously leading the charge there, and that being the connection, along with Rich Rodriguez. Amari Grayson, again, another guard, a junior, who comes to Morgantown as well. He was also first-team All-Conference in Conference USA, started in 22 of 26 games as a freshman and sophomore. He was an all-freshman Conference USA member, and they were a prolific rushing attack, we know as well, back in 2024, a top 3 rushing attack then, with Amari Grayson being a part of that, again, along with Cam Griffin. Devin Vass is a transfer who was previously at K-State. He's another guy that looks to add consistency to this offensive line. He appeared in 11 games and started 7 for K-State, did the redshirt junior. Karsten Cassidy is a guy who figures to play at the tackle position, previously at UConn. He started all 12 games, primarily being at right tackle. Throughout 2 seasons at UConn, again, he's a redshirt junior now. He didn't allow a sack, was very good in the run blocking, and we'll look to have that translate to Big 12 play. And last but not least, the last name we want to talk about before we get into kind of some position things, last name we want to talk about is the incoming freshman, Kevin Brown. Kevin Brown's a 4-star recruit, one of the top recruits in the whole state of Pennsylvania, previously committed to Penn State, but now will be a part of the Mountaineers after what they had transpire, with Franklin being gone and all that. He's a guy who, you would have to say has the highest ceiling of anybody along this offensive line. He's got, NFL aspirations like you can't even believe. He's coming in as a freshman, but he don't play like a freshman. He don't look like a freshman. We'll see how he fits into the equation for Trickett and Rich Rodriguez moving forward. So, again, there's a bunch of names. Let me throw them at you again. So, at the tackle positions, potentially would be Karsten Cassidy, redshirt junior, UConn. Malik Agbo, who's been here. He's a redshirt senior, was previously at Texas. Deshaun Woods is another name that I didn't have for a redshirt sophomore coming from Butler Community College in Kansas. Kevin Brown, potentially at the tackle position, a four-star guy, freshman out of Harrisburg, PA. At the guards, Nick Cray, who's been here as a Mountaineer. We're familiar with him. Josh Isosa was at Oklahoma in 2024, another year in the program. Amari Grayson, three-star transfer from Jack State. Devin Vass, three-star transfer from K-State. And then Landon Livingston at center, Wes King, Cameron Griffin. Maybe some guys with some versatility there listed at the center position, but we'll see, where they might line up to give the Mountaineers their best chance to win. And so there's primarily, right, and there could be someone that would surprise us and come on up not necessarily out of nowhere, but those names that I just gave you figure to be the main contributing pieces for this West Virginia offensive line as you head into 2026. Now, there are a couple other names, to know, like I mentioned, Deshaun Woods, Aiden Woods, and then some other freshmen as well. But these are our guys, and on paper, looks better. On paper, you like that you have a couple guys coming from Jack State with Rick Trickett, where they had one of the most prolific rushing attacks in the whole country, with Cam Cook, who is the Mountaineers' feature back this season, which we're happy to have him, as we've talked about even a lot on this very show, Mountaineer Moment. But these are our guys. This is the pieces that Rick Trickett has to work with. Again, it is a good combination, I feel, of, at least on paper, of some transfer pieces that kind of had their calling cards at other places, not giving up many sacks, not giving up many rushes, being able to run block. Then you got a guy with absolute star potential in Kevin Brown coming in as a freshman, and then you got your pieces who have taken jumps and taken strides during their Mountaineer career, and you can hope that they're going to do that again in Landon Livingston and Nick Cray. Now, after the break, we are going to answer that question. Again, I do think it's going to be better, but how much better are we talking? My thoughts on that after the break. This episode of Mountaineer Moment is brought to you by our friends over at Levels Arcade in Morgantown. They got a great food selection, great drinks and beers on tap, and this place is loaded with new and vintage games for you to enjoy. All three levels of this place got a bunch of games for you and your family to enjoy. They always got something going on over there at Levels in downtown Morgantown. Check out their Instagram page at Levels Arcade for all the latest theme nights and things that they got going on throughout the week. So what are you waiting for? Grab a friend, grab a drink, and play some new games and meet some new people and enjoy your time at Levels. All right, Mountaineer Moment. So, indeed, there is a reason to believe that this West Virginia offensive line in 2026 will, in fact, be better. But how much better are we talking? Now, again, some of those pieces who shall remain nameless here in 2026, because we're on to a new year with bigger and better things. Some of those pieces along this offensive line in 2025, like 2 or 3 guys were, among the worst, obviously, in the Big 12, and some were like really, really, really graded low amongst the entire nation for performance along the offensive line, whether it be in run blocking or pass blocking or both. Just the reality of it. This was a position group that struggled mightily. And so, again, I think there's reason to believe that there's a couple reasons to believe that this offensive line will be better. One, really easy and obvious. Can't be much worse than it was. 2, you brought pieces in that you like, right? There's reason to be excited about some of these guys for some of those numbers that I gave you. Wes King not giving up a sack in 1,700 snaps. Two guys that were part of an offensive line that was really, really elite at Conference USA level in Jack State. You bring in some guys who have a lot of experience, which would be, kind of the third reason for optimism. This is one of the most experienced position groups, not together, but most experienced position groups as far as snaps played in their career in the entire country. That's a big deal. And hopefully that pays off, just by what we see on the field, with experience paying off and working well for you. And then fourthly, Rick Trickett, man, he's back. He's 78 years old, but he thinks he can have an impact, and I think he can too, right? He's certainly got the experience, certainly got the ability, and certainly has even the results from what he's done at Jack State over the last few years, and their ability to put up points and be led by an offensive line that can move some bodies around. So how much better will it be, right? If this was a bottom tier of the Big 12 last season, which it was along the offensive line, is this an offensive line that can lead you to the top 4 teams in the Big 12 along the offensive line? I don't know if that's true. Right, I don't know that I would necessarily go as far to say that. But we'll just have to wait and see. I'm hopeful for that. But I have to give you an answer, right? I have to give you an answer. How much better? I think just from a fan perspective, sometimes those games are just grueling to watch last season, because you try to play hurry-up offense, and it would be 2-yard run, minus 4 yards on a sack, incomplete pass, 3 and out, punt it away. Like, that was a lot of West Virginia's offense, and it would happen in like 43 seconds some drives, it felt like. I think this offensive line has the ability to sustain more drives, unlike you did a season ago. I think this offensive line has the ability to move some people. I think this offensive line has the ability to get yards in short yardage situations, something last year's team was terrible at. Didn't matter if it was 3rd and an inch or 4th and 1 or 4th and a centimeter. Sometimes that offensive line simply couldn't move the ball or get enough drive up front for a QB sneak or a handoff to be able to get you much of anything. And that was a problem. So, Rich Rodriguez has been known to say, even regarding this position group, I'm going to fix it. I'm going to fix it. I'm going to fix it. And I think he brought the pieces in here that are capable of fixing it, and I think Rick Trickett is capable of fixing it, or else Rich Rodriguez wouldn't have brought him in. Do I think, again, this is going to be one of the best offensive lines in the country? No. Do I think that this offensive line will lead to more success at every other position on offense? Quarterbacks are going to have a better time. Running backs and receivers are going to have a better time. Yes. I think they can finish absolutely positively in the top half of the Big 12. As far as offense is concerned. This is Rick Trickett, this is Rich Rodriguez's offense, just like every offense in the country, but especially with, what Rich Rod wants to do. It takes a certain type of person, hard edge mentality, and all of those things. And I think he went out and got pieces with that in mind. And so I think this will be an offense this year that we're going to look back and say, the offensive line wasn't just not a weakness, it was a strength. I think there's potential that this offensive line could be a strength for this team, and that would be significantly better than where it was a season ago. So again, statistically, if you're looking for a number, I think they can finish in the top half of the Big 12 as far as like the production, or if you were to see a power ranking on offensive lines in this Big 12, I wouldn't be surprised to see this group in the top half of that number. Is that good enough for you? If you want more, I can give you more. But again, for now, episode 262 of Mountaineer Moment. Again, we would love for you to join this community. Let's hit that subscribe button. Let's continue to grow this thing together. We're on the hunt for 2,000 subscribers, and we want to get there sooner rather than later. So make sure you're doing your part and helping us grow this thing. And just know, I would greatly, greatly appreciate it. Episode 262 is in the books. We'll see you next time on Mountaineer Moment.